Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to move an addendum, a pro forma, because obviously I'm not the author of it, but the addendum reads, request that the Mayor, Chief Executive and Auckland Council Investments Limited continue to do everything within their powers to encourage the commitment of Ports of Auckland to not proceed with exercising resource consents to extend Bledisloe Wharf B2 and B3 until such time as the port future study has been completed and Council has had the opportunity to consider study recommendations, public feedback and
Point of order, Madam Chair.
the long-term future of the
Point of order, Madam Chair. Isn't that what we're actually saying?
It's in the letter.
It is, and I think Councillor Brewer very helpfully suggested that we note the letter in the minutes and we append it and make it attached so that we're clear.
Just sorry, Madam Chair.
Councillors,
Just not what's in the letter. There's a qualifier there, a very important qualifier that I referred to, and that is if the construction of the wharf extensions are not time critical. So if the ports were to say they are time critical, which they have said, then it renders the main clause largely redundant. And I think that's a point that Councillor Lee's trying to.
I'd just like a seconder.
I'll second. Happy to second.
so
Madam Chair, can I just speak to that briefly?
both councillors have already spoken, so they can't second an amendment.
I have not spoken. I've asked questions. I've not spoken.
Casey, sorry, we're just trying to do too many things at once.
So I can
we're just, you can second it, it's fine. So we're just...
Can I now speak to it briefly, Madam Chair?
Hold on a sec, Councillor. We're just taking a second to step through this. I can see the point that Councillor Watson is raising. However, I think we are somewhat second-guessing the process, and we are expecting that the process is limited to the absolute wording which has been carefully crafted by the legal team to allow us to discuss exactly these issues. I just need to seek clarification, and it may be helpful from one of our legal counsel, if the time critical issue, is that a deal breaker, a game breaker, or does that still allow us to keep that strong discussion going?
Sorry, I was a little distracted while I was just managing just a couple of conversations that were in flow. Could I get you to just repeat the question?
So just to clarify, Catherine, the point that's being made and the concern raised is that within the proposed wharf extension portion of the letter, that we have the sentence in there that says if the wharf extensions are not time critical, etc., and the concern expressed by the council is that this is a possible deal breaker, i.e. if the port company come back and say they are time critical, we fold our tents and go home. It's my understanding that this wording has been carefully chosen, but certainly does not preclude our ability to carry on that discussion. We're just asking for legal advice.
That's right. It's certainly designed to flush out any proposition from the ports as to their perspective of the time criticality of the process.
Yep.
But what that means is when it comes back, then we'll get a sense of where they've got a line in the sand and what our next step will be in an appropriate manner.
Right.
I don't think it prevents them at all responding to what's a very clear request and a very clear sentiment expressed in the letter.
So not everyone might agree, but from the chair, I think we've dealt with that issue. We've got the letter noted, and although, Councillor, we understand the sentiment and agree with the sentiment in your recommendation, it's not necessary and it is duplication. But
Madam Chair, can I
take
speak to
your
that
time
now,
to
please?
speak. Yep.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I support the recommendations, and obviously I move the addendum which I believe enhances the recommendations. The letter itself, members, has not come from the political level of the governing body. It's come from the Chief Executive. I think it's an important, perhaps legalistic point, but it is important. The addendum really expresses a political view which supports the Chief Executive's letter. Madam Chair, I think it's time to steady the ship and to pull back from tearing each other apart, and that requires give and take from both sides. In terms of the letter itself, I think it is too little too late. However, as the Mayor has alluded, it depends what is said face to face in the room in these matters, from my own experience. And therefore, it's a case of whether there's velvet in the velvet glove or something rather firmer. But we shall see. Proof will be in the pudding. Just to speak very generally about the study, it's obvious that the harbour and port have a interrelationship, but that the port, in the end, if it keeps on expanding, will overwhelm the harbour. So it's a balancing act, and it's been a one-sided approach since the 1860s. I think we're getting the message from the public that must come to an end at some stage, and some stage soon. In terms of leadership, the structure, the ownership structure and governance structure of the Ports of Auckland has become more convoluted. Since the Super City, we have yet another level of a board, and in terms of leadership, there's quite a lot of it, but they're all doing different things. The board of the Ports of Auckland are there to run the place commercially, and it's that form of leadership that they're hired for. ACIL has a kind of a governance come commercial approach, and then there's the committee and the council itself. But at the top is the Mayor and the governing body, and we're there to give strategic direction and to express the views of the public, to channel the views of the public, and that's how democracy works. Our speciality, if you like, in leadership is doing that, not running the port, but telling the port, hey, there are limits to your commercial role because the people of Auckland have a stake in it, and that the environment, as Councillor Fletcher has mentioned, is considered so important that after many, many years and much debate, the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park Act was passed by Parliament to give an extra level of protection to the Gulf and the Waitemata Harbour. And our role is to remind those leaders of the port that there are limits past which they go at their peril. In terms of the law and regulation, there was we have to remember that the Ports of Auckland is a relatively new creature. As a commercial entity for well over 100 years, the Democratic Harbour Board ran the port and ran it very successfully and commercially successfully as well. However, the public did have a direct say over the Harbour Board and could kick them out if they didn't want them. In the past, most of the public were okay about reclamation. Auckland went in for large-scale reclamation. Sydney, on the other hand, didn't. But that's our history. But as I said before, there is a signal coming from the people of Auckland that enough is enough, and that there is a line that should not be crossed. And I think we have a role as elected members to listen to the people. At the same time, we have a role to protect the status and integrity of the Auckland Council, and you don't do that by dragging its name through the mud. So we have to think about all of those aspects and, as I say, steady the ship, reassure the public, and get on with all our other work. And I think this issue is by no means over. it could get a lot worse, but hopefully this will be a step in the right direction, and I ask members to reinforce the Chief Executive's letter with something that has come from the elected members of this council. And I think the wording been written by Councillor Darby is very fair and reasonable, and I'm happy to promote it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I'm not particularly bothered by this. It is duplication, because that's exactly what the letter has recommended, which is, and I agree with you, it is time for us to steady the process. It's what I've endeavoured to do today by remaining within the parameters of our level of governance and within the law, and I think it's good to see that we're all agreeing now to stop tearing ourselves to shreds and starting to step back into the governance role that we are required to perform. I think what we could do is maybe move the note down. Councillor Brewer, you are the last speaker. I am going to suggest that if we do, deal with this recommendation, which it seems people may well be of a mind to deal with, that we then place and note the letter attached in the blah blah, so that the two are linked together. Otherwise it leaves this hanging, and for anyone reading our minutes, they may well be confused and think that we're just starting the process, and I think by linking the two, that's very useful. Councillor Brewer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think that is useful, and I think Councillor Lee made the good point that this letter has been written by the Chief Executive, and when I started bandying it around a bit like Neville Chamberlain, I noted that it was that it was from the Mayor, but it is indeed from the Chief Executive, and as you have highlighted, it has been carefully crafted from a legal perspective, but as we all know, what people are also wanting to see is the political leadership, and that's what we as governors are here to provide. And so this is yes, partly duplicating what the Chief Executive has asked, but it is also a direct directive from the Auckland Development Committee. And I think, Madam Chair, we have every right to do this and should, because frankly, I believe we've been let down as far as breaches around the SOI, and that is highlighted in the Chief Executive's letter, around ACIL needing to have regard for the Council's wider objectives, particularly around its environmental, social and governance considerations. The Chief Executive also notes, Madam Chair, that the statement of corporate intent that the ports are accountable for says that any significant capital expenditure which impacts the port's footprint and its connection to Auckland will be discussed with its shareholder. And of course, the more famous one is the SOI, the no surprises policy, which has clearly been breached. So I believe that this successfully pushes it back into their court and acknowledges, as Councillor Darby has carefully crafted here, and Councillor Lee has articulated, that we're not overstepping our mark. We're encouraging, like the Chief Executive is, and we're doing everything within our powers, acknowledging that we are constrained at a certain governance and legal context. So I think, as you've indicated, this is certainly an acceptable and appropriate political leadership inclusion that has long been asked for. And I suppose I really encourage the Ports of Auckland, Madam Chair, to come back not only in response to the Chief Executive's letter, but particularly to this directive to encourage from the ADC today, definitively, decisively and in a timely manner. I think the days of putting out full pages of PR and that are over, and they really need to respond black and white, particularly around that issue of wharf extensions. Because I think it's fair to say, Madam Chair, in 2013, for those of us that were around this table, when we unanimously slapped on a non-compliance directive on that port zone until the completion of the unitary plan, none of us envisaged that we would be delivered up in surprise last month two proposed wharf extensions that were set to be built in the coming weeks of 92 and 98 metres. That was not in the spirit of the relationship we have with the Ports of Auckland ACIL.
We agree,
So
Councillor.
that this directive certainly puts it back on them. And I also, just finally, Madam Chair, I want to also, they are beyond reproach, and any politicisation and any debate that might be happening currently around this table. But I also want to really implore the independent hearings panel and the process associated with that to be cognisant of our longer term unitary plan provisions in and around the port zone. And yes, we have had mediation, as has been publicly confirmed. Yes, we have put our position, which some of us voted for, which was about tightening up the reclamation rules.
We're starting to head back into
But they also, but this independence hearing panel, Madam Chair, they need to be cognisant not of the position that we adopted
Councillor,
last month,
that's
but
your
of the
5
public
minutes.
sentiment this month.
extension of time.
Public sentiment this
Councillor,
month.
we
the
do
fact
need to
that
move
the,
on.
that we have that most of us now believe that we need to tighten up our position around and the fact that the Ports of Auckland, Madam Chair, have moved its position as far as it's now willing to talk in a collaborative way about the future reclamation rules. So where we landed in an official context is not where we are now, and I'm calling on the Independence Hearing Panel to reflect that. Otherwise, we're going to relitigate this in another month,
Councillor.
in another
It
year.
would be good before
So-
we need to finish the meeting to
So
actually
thank
get
you.
to the unitary plan portion of the meeting.